Good morning. It's good to be with you this morning. This is another Marketing Sherpa Summit, and for me it's sort of special. This is our 11th year, and I was just standing in the back thinking about the setup, watching the video, watching Austin and Pamela. I remember when Austin came to work in our research lab straight out of college and occupied a tiny little room that was a closet because we had no other place to put him. And he continued to, he was amazing, but he continued to thrive, continued to grow. And later we had to move into larger buildings on our campus. And the place where Austin worked is now a nightclub because it was directly on the beach. And Austin's official closet, the beginning of his really stellar career, he heads up all of our publishing operations, is today a toilet in the club. And we actually had a company meeting there and took him back to his humble beginnings and reminded him. Things change over time. I'm here now, and it's different for me because I have my son here. And in the first Marketing Sherpa Summit, my son was 10 years of age. He actually went to school in McGlaughlin's. His teachers were our scientists and analysts and our writers. He learned English from a writer who has 20 books on the New York Times bestseller list, is a superb editor, and worked him over and over again in the classics. And he learned science from our director of science. In fact, his mathematics training was from Bob Kemper, who is a brilliant mathematician that works in our group. And he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but he's somewhere in the building. And you probably don't know this, but when I look out there, the lights are so bright, I can start to see some of you, but I have a harder time seeing in the back. So Quinn, where are you in the building? There you go. Walk up this direction, son. My 10-year-old boy has gotten a little bit bigger. And he is now 21 years of age, and he's in Vegas. Can you do the math? I asked him this morning how he's doing. He said he was a bit tired. I said, how much sleep did he get? He said, maybe 2 hours. He came with a young man, and I asked him, where is your friend? He said, he's in a coma. This is Quinn. Quinn, turn around, shake your hands. He's 21. He didn't know I was going to pick on him. He is working full-time in our lab and attending Harvard. And I want to point out that he's single and been very unsuccessful. And I thought this might be an opportunity to find some, compassionate girl. I'm here, and it's actually makes me proud to see my son here now at 21, growing up and being a part of the operation, carrying significant responsibilities, doing well at Harvard. To see Austin standing up on the stage, and he's a superb speaker, teaches all over the country. See Pamela, she started with us years ago. She's still very young, 18 years of age, but she's brilliant. And all of these people that have been growing as the organization grows. And as I say so, I want to talk about this particular topic because having spoke on this platform for 11 years, I'm going to do something today that at first might seem maybe the wrong move. We have lots of new content at Marketing Sherpa and at McLabs. We're constantly doing research. We just finished a major national study on the connection between brand and the value proposition. It would have been a superb topic to teach you on. It's full of new content and material that you probably have never seen before. And we're undertaking 3 major studies now, and we have just started our first postgraduate program offering both a certificate at the postgraduate level, and it folds into a master's program that is jointly granted by McLabs and the University of Florida. You'll be hearing more about that, but if you'd like to get your postgraduate work in all the things you're learning about here, it can be done now in a fully accredited degree granted by our 2 organizations in a partnership. There's lots of content there I could draw from, and yet for a bit it may seem like I'm going to go backwards. And there's a reason. Because when I stand in front of an audience like this, my first question is, in those moments that I have together, how can I invest my time in a way that will serve them most effectively? I only get one chance to talk to you like this. I've got one major session to speak to you, and some of you I may not see again, and others it may be at least a year. So how do we invest the time together? I have to be careful because the tempting thing is to find the most entertaining content or the most impressive content. But in both cases, I lose sight of what the goal is. And the goal is to serve the group here in the most effective way. I can't get lost trying to impress you with speaking ability or knowledge, or it's just trying to make you have a good time and feel good about the session. My son is on the front row. If there was one thing I could warn him about in his career, if he moves into communications and marketing, if there was one single topic, one warning, one important, essential insight I'd want to share, it would be what we're going to talk about today. So in some ways, I'm going to go back 11 years without going through our history, but moving into some of the most essential content to connect it what I've come to see as the greatest danger facing every single marketer in this room today. And so I want to share by, first of all, doing something that's become a familiar pattern for those of you that have been here before. I want to show you two pieces of collateral and ask you to think about which one of these is the most effective, which will produce the highest conversion rate. And we're going to vote. We're going to do it rapidly. I'm going to have you have one finger up for the first one, letter A, two fingers up for version B, and we're going to discuss them for just a moment. This is all building towards that essential insight. And to help you do that, we're going to have to move rapidly because I'd like to spend part of my time together with you today doing live optimization and looking at other people's collateral and cashing that in with a topic that we're going to be addressing in the moments that we have together. So let's begin by looking at that, and let's hold up our fingers. Those of you that believe it should be version A, hold up one finger. Those for version B, hold up two fingers. Let me see your hands all over the building. We need to see them all over the building. Thank you. Thank you. You can put them down. Those of you that are joining us around the country as we live stream, you should make the same judgment in your mind at least, because the act of engaging your mind will help you to grasp the essential message that we're going to be sharing as we go forward. Now we're going to move that rapidly. I would like you to do one thing before I go to the next one. Turn to the person beside of you and tell them why you chose the one that you did. You're actually sharing a hypothesis. You may not realize that, but I want to get into your hypothesis, so do it quickly. Splendid. All right. How many of you would like to see which one is the winner? Let me see your hands. All right. Here we go. And it is this one, a 20% increase. While you're doing that, Paul Cheney, can you hear my voice? Paul, we may not have the right version of this with the last changes that you made. And to Paul Cheney's credit, I have a video recording of him at 2 in the morning working still on this. They worked through the night, and I just made final changes standing in the green room. Paul, is this the final version? Can you just check that out with John? Someone let us know, because I see a word that we changed earlier, but we're going to keep going, okay? Let's go to the next one. All right, version A or version B? Let's vote this time. Hands up high. You can take a moment. A or B? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. 1 and 2. 1 or 2? All over. It's important that you vote. Look around if the vote's around you, because we're going to make it a very important point. We're going to do something we have never done before. Look around the room and see how everyone else is voting. If you're not sure of yourself, you can always copy someone. That's what happens in most of our committees that we use to design pages. All right? 75% increase. 75% increase. I'm going to look at another now. Mobile. Many of you are engaged in mobile. Here's 2 versions of a mobile page. Which one? And again, as you're judging, you're coming up with a reason. And that reason is essentially the key point of a hypothesis that develops in your mind. Many of us don't realize that we're building hypotheses, but once you do, it engages you in a new way to think about how to get to the best answer. For now, just look at these 2, version A and version B, and let's vote. Lift your hands up high all over the room. Good, 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 good. All right. Here we go. How many of you have gotten everything right so far? Let me see your hand. Okay? How many of you have not? Be brave and bold and humble. All right? Good. Put your hand down. All right, let's go. One more of these. This is for the city of New Orleans. We were running experiments to see how they could drive more tourists to their city. There is A and there is B. A final vote from you would be very helpful. Ready? Go ahead, vote. Vote. All right. Good, good. Is everybody's hands up? I'm watching. One more time. Let me see. I'm actually watching your fingers to get a sense of what the relationship is in the room. Good. You can put them down, and the answer is B. 32%. Now let's start by asking you a simple question. Were any of you in the room, just nod your heads or wave your arm, were any of you surprised by the winners? Is that the case? I want you to know that we did not pick tricky examples. We did not deliberately try to find treatments that would fool you. Every one of these comes from experiments that we have conducted in our research lab, and we've conducted more than 20,000 experiments. For those of you that don't know much about our history, McLabs is the oldest research lab studying decision patterning. We were the first group that I know of to view the net as the world's greatest behavioral research laboratory, and we began our research back when the net was still in Unix. All of these years, we've been studying the simple question and trying to understand its vital answer, and that is this. When given a set of options, why do people choose one over the other? Why do they say yes to this one, but not this one? That understanding is essential to commerce because in commerce, the only way a company wins a customer is to win a yes. And as Peter Drucker has observed, the real task of any leader in an organization is still to win customers. It's to achieve yeses. So behind all of this is a lot of research and questions, but there's something else. There's a pattern that I've been recognizing. And I've seen this pattern again in a research project we did this year. This is all fresh research I'm going to share with you. Before I go there, let me share something that I did 4 or 5 years ago. In 2 separate fairly informal studies. We were online with over 1,000 marketers. We asked them to move through a series of treatments like this using their experience to try and understand or to try and predict which piece of collateral would produce the highest lift, much like you've just done now. In the first experiment, we found something disturbing. 72% of the marketers chose the wrong treatment. Now, you have to think about that for a second, but before I share the insight that began to trouble me regarding that, we did the study again. The number came out at 74%. So, essentially, 3/4 of the marketers were selecting the wrong treatment. Now, this connects to a bigger issue, but let me point out for you that the marketers would have had more luck probably by simply flipping a coin. There are no expert marketers. There are only experienced marketers and expert testers. And part of our problem is that we are becoming expert marketers, or at least we think we are. During this first point, I'm going to start to try and help you see something critical, to discover an essential insight. But before I go there, I want to share with you another study that we just found. And as I do so, I'd like you to consider that there's a fundamental truth this study points to. So don't just look at the numbers, dig down deep and ask why. But here you'll see that the Wall Street Journal and Adweek are carrying a study conducted by MarketingSherpa. And in this study, we asked marketers what they thought was the best way and what they thought consumers preferred in terms of how to be contacted, how to be marketed to. And on the other hand, we asked consumers the same questions. So we compared the responses of 2,021 U.S. consumers and 455 marketers. Here's what we saw. Marketers said that prominent displays in social were preferred, and marketers chose that at 61%, but consumers only chose 20%. They want updates via social much less than marketers think. Here's another. Prioritize free shipping. Marketers said that's only 18% as in terms of importance to a consumer, but consumers said 74% of the time it was very important to them. Let's look at another. Direct mail. Marketers believed that direct mail is losing its importance, and perhaps it is, but they thought that it would only be valuable to 19%, whereas consumers said 54%. Are you seeing a pattern here? Are you seeing a huge disconnect between what the marketer thinks and what the consumer thinks? Look at online ads. Marketers thought 60%, consumers said 27%. You should notice that the disparity between the marketer and the consumer is huge. And do you know what I think is happening? Before I can even unfold this problem with the blind spot, I'd like you to consider something. The more expert we become as marketers, the less expert we become as consumers. And everyone in this room is an expert consumer, but our constant exposure to marketing speak and marketing think has made us become quote-unquote expert marketers at the expense of being able to become expert consumers. And something connected to that observation is at the heart of our problem. Think about it for a moment. Think about it for a moment as we start to talk about blind spots. And in doing so, I want to sort of focus on an essential question. The one that I shared with you at the beginning uncovers this particular blind spot that I think I would consider the most important topic I can share with you in the time that we have remaining. How can I discover the cause and the treatment for my inherited marketing blind spot? And to do that, we're going to move through sort of three thought movements. The first one is to understand the psychological source of your disconnect. And to do that, I want you to grab on the table in front of you, there is a card. We're going to use that in just a moment, and I want to share with you a diagram in front of you. What you're seeing was drawn by one of our artists at MarketingSherpa and McGlaughlin's, and you'll see that it's referencing the ocular blind spot. Without spending a lot of time going into the definitions, there is a problem where the photoreceptor cells and the retina come together. In that particular problem, the eye is unable to truly see a part of what it is pointed at, you might say. The ocular blind spot is well known among ophthalmologists and experts and scientists, but most of us don't aware or are not aware of how critical it can be and what our mind does to work around it. I want to demonstrate it for you in just a moment, but I want to share with you that there's something called pre-attentive processing. And this is where your subconscious mind is gathering information and building a model of the world that you see. Most of us believe inherently that what we see, even as you look up here on the stage at me, is exactly what is there. But it's not. Your subconscious mind goes through a very, very complex set of processes to sort of build a model of what is here, filling in spaces, and the ocular blind spot is only part of it. This pre-attentive processing happens so rapidly that we're not aware of it. And we become very certain that what we see is exactly what is there. But it's not the case. So let's do this for a moment. Let's see an example of that. Take that card, flip it over on this side, and I want to walk through an exercise. You're welcome to talk, but let's go through these 4 steps. So the first thing you're going to have to do is close your right eye. And I know that's going to be challenging for Brandon here in the front row, but this is the right eye, Brandon, on that side right there. All right, so close your right eye, and with your left eye, look at the numbers on the right side, starting with 1. You can see sort of the instructions, but I'll talk them through so you can focus. Start all the way on the 1. You should be able to see the small blue McGlaughlin's seal. That will be to your left. Keep your head absolutely still, and with your left eye, look at the other numbers. Moving sort of 2, 3, 4. About the time you get to 5, the seal disappears. But keep going. By the time you hit 8, it starts to appear again. What's going on here? The ocular blind spot is preventing you from truly seeing the image of the seal. Now, you didn't come to learn about ocular blind spots, but it's very important that we understand that, because I'm going to connect that now to a marketing blind spot. And it's going to take me time to unpack this for you. It's going to take me time to help you see its significance, and we're going to have to engage all of our attention together, work together with partners, and really sort of concentrate to gain the best possible insight from what we're talking about now. I want to compare the ocular blind spot with the marketer's blind spot. How many of you could see that actually happening? Let me see your hands as you work through it. Good. So most of you can see this. This blind spot is interesting to me, because though you have the blind spot, when you look at your friend's face, when you move left and right, there's no perception of it. Why? Because your brain is actually creating a model, and it fills in the blind spot. It's stunning what we could do together to discuss and show you how, when we fool the brain, what that blind spot will do with someone. It's good to see you again, by the way. And the fact is, putting those pieces together helps us realize that some of the things we're most confident in, some of the things we're most certain of, are not accurate. So let's look at another version. What you're seeing is a survey page from one of the largest survey companies in the world. And I'm going to focus in on the top of the page, because I'm going to ask you to do something very important in just a moment. You're going to see that the creative has no headline. Now, some of you may have been through, I've shown this once before when speaking, but it's so vital. We're going to look at it in a completely different way today and learn something. And I don't think hardly anyone here has been exposed to it. If you have, just sort of be more quiet until the others get a chance to experience what we're going to do together. I need you to select a headline. And by the way, after lunch, you're going to be creating a test together. And so what we're going to learn right now will have high impact and how you work to design that test, because before you leave this summit, we're going to see the results of your test. For now, I'm going to give you 4 headlines. I'd like you to select which one of these 4 you think will be number 1. So take a moment. It's very important that you take it and you write it down, because you're going to work with somebody in just a second. Select the one that you believe will produce the highest response rate. The only thing changed on this page is the headline. All right? So go ahead and mark that down. Once you have that down, I'd like you to do something a little bit more difficult. We are soon going to be having you text in an answer. So you're going to want to get clear here for just a moment. Once you've done that, I would like you to go to the next stage here, and that is please order the headlines. So what do you think is second and third and fourth? All were tested. So you've identified number 1, but now you can just use the numbers. Write down, whatever you think is first, and you can use the numbers on the left to write down the rest of the order, and we'll get a sense of how you vote. Now that you've done that, I'm going to challenge you by putting you in a classic marketing environment. How many of you, when it comes time to decide the creative, work with a group of people, and if you're not careful, it becomes a design by committee? A group of people have ideas, and one of 2 things happen. The person in the room with the greatest authority, or the most influence, or perhaps the most vocal, dominates what happens on that page. Or everybody compromises, and you reduce your creative thinking down to the lowest common denominator. You've heard me say this before. Someone said a camel is a horse put together by a committee. Many of our pages become camels. I want to put you in a group of 3. I want you to keep your answer, and then I want you to all in that group work together to agree on which one you think is the highest performing headline. So you'll have to have a conversation. Well, you'll have a few moments. After this, we're going to vote. So be bold about breaking into groups of 3. You can move your chairs, you can get up if you need to, and you can certainly make as much noise as you would like. And let's do that right now. Go ahead. All right. So you've had your official marketing committee meeting, and I need each of you to text in the answer. First of all, let me ask this question. How many of you, once you voted, hold your hand up if the official vote on the committee chose a different headline than you did personally? Let me see your hands. Look around the room. Good, 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 good. That has to be everywhere, right? Just statistics, all right? Good. Now, we're going to have you use your phone, and I need to know what the instructions are for that, so somebody might need to help me with that. We're going to have you vote so that you can actually see how your votes are regarding this headline, and then we're going to talk about it, okay? So, Paul Cheney, are you running up here to see me? Paul, what number do they text? Okay, just go to the next slide. Well, that works. All right. Paul's brilliant. Did you notice that? All right. So there you go. Text Sherpa email. There you go to 22333. And just select your vote. Text a 1, 2, 3, or 4. We're going to see your results appear on this slide. So you may choose what you personally chose as opposed to your group. All right? I'll let you choose what you personally chose as opposed to your group. Text it in. And we'll watch the results start to come in, and we're going to talk about that. Now, I'm watching my time, and I'm going to move as swiftly as I can with you so that we can fill our time with as much value as possible. And I'll need a signal from the back. Paul, just stay where you can. There we go. Look at that. Marketers, 11 years ago we couldn't do this. The world has changed. All right, now take a look, and I'm going to show you something pretty interesting. I want to show you which headline won, and then we're going to talk about something beneath that might help us figure out what this blind spot is. So watch. There are the headlines. Whoa. You did good. Give yourself a hand, all right? Now, there's more to this. There's more to this. Let's unpack it a little bit further. Let me show you all the headlines that were tested. Do you see the ones in bold? Those were the 4 that you voted on. But we actually tested 10 of these. Now, in testing the 10 of these, we saw a fascinating pattern. I'm going to share with you how they actually ranked. So you'll notice that you picked one that actually ranked 4 across all of them. And here's the actual statistical differences. So what can we learn from this? In fact, let's ask the simple question. Why did these headlines perform in this order? Now, you need a very clear hypothesis for this. Because if you don't have that, you can't repeat your result. So let's break it down in a little bit more depth. There are 2 essential principles that I'd like to bear out, and I'm looking beneath these principles so that we can see opportunity. And do I have to stay up here, guys in the back? Television crew, camera crew, can I go down? I can. Good. All right, let me come down there with you. So, a point-first sentence is something we're talking about right here. Point-sequenced grammar. There are essentially 3 types of sentences. In the first sentence, the point is at the beginning. In the second, the point is at the middle. In the third, the point is at the end. Let's talk about a free trial. Somebody give me an example of a point-first sentence about a free trial. Raise your hand. All right, I'm looking. All right. Yes, sir, right there. This is David. Start your free trial, that would be a point last sentence. Start is something, isn't the point of the sentence. Free trial is at the end. But you help me enormously by sort of giving examples. So that's the end. Okay? Never mind, it's the opposite. He's brave. I'll take courage any day. All right? Yes, ma'am. Free trial. and then afterwards something like download it in less than 3 minutes or get it in less than 3 minutes, but free trial, okay? There's a point first. Now let's get a little harder. Let's do a point middle sentence. I'll help you out with, look at this. The headline is here. Here the headline is. Here is the headline. So give me a point middle sentence. Yes, sir, right here. Get your free trial when you join today. All right? I could see he's accessing a certain compartment of the brain. Have you ever watched someone and they take their eyes and they look off to the left or they look off to the right? Scientists and psychologists have discovered you're literally accessing various sectors when you do that. And that's what you're doing as you sort of think out loud. Now, there's a really important reason that we need to understand the difference in point sequence grammar. And you can sort of see that if you go back to the original headlines. All the headlines at the top are point first. You might say that the surveys, which is sort of point first, as an implied, but look at the difference. It's only 5.67 to 5.12 with win. So there's almost no statistical difference. Do you notice get? And do you notice the second one doesn't say get, but it implies it, doesn't it? Get. Here's your first survey. Get paid, get rewarded, win. Now there is a substantial difference because in these others, the point at the back, start earning money, earn rewards, I'm going down beneath that. Your opinions, cash and prizes. Do you see how it's point last? Copywriters, there's something here that you can learn, but beneath this is an insight to the marketer's blind spot. Let's look at a second piece. Look at point sequence grammar, and now let's look at something else. Customer-centric logic. What is happening here? When structuring a point first sentence, one must ensure that the point conveys the customer's get before it conveys the marketer's ask. Let's look at an example. Let's go back to the collateral. So what in that second category, the first two words are set up. How many woke up today saying, boy, I hope I can set up something? I mean, those vendors were here yesterday excited because they get to set up those fun booths out there. What about you're invited to join? That sounds positive, but how many of you have been invited to enough things and aren't interested in joining anything else right now? And join the survey spot. Same problem. Oh, here's another one. Take online surveys. Taking and getting aren't exactly the same when the object of the sentence is online surveys. I mean, most of us aren't thrilled about that, are they? So what's going with these sentences? Here's what's going. The marketer is starting with what matters to them, not what matters to the customer or the prospect. Can everyone in the room see that? Can you see how both the point sequence grammar and the customer-centric logic become essential keys to understanding how these headlines perform? The what I do is at the front of those in the bottom, and the what I get is at the front of those that performed at the top. Now, I'm going to ask you a capital question. I'm going to ask you the question that matters the most to me right now, which is this. Oops, shouldn't have done that. Which is this. I have a hand grenade here, sorry. I just dropped it off my belt. How can those 2 points help us understand what might be going on with regards to the blind spot that marketers have every single day? Any ideas? You know what? For 25 years, I've been asking this question, why do people choose yes? Given a set of options, why do people choose yes? And we found fascinating implications for a framework in the value proposition. But if you get beneath the value proposition, there's been a question that's plagued me over and over again. I remember my first set of experiments were one of the largest media companies in the world. And the person in charge of the test on the company side, the media side, was making a salary of over $300,000 a year. I know this because they eventually, when they left that company, applied for work with McGlaughlin's. I didn't know it at the time. This was a smart person. This was a capable person. You don't get paid $300,000 a year unless you have some skill set. But the very first test that we did produced a 67% increase in revenue. And the second test produced a 541% increase in revenue. Does this mean that the scientists and analysts at McLabs are smarter than this person? It does not. There are smart people all over the world right now making very bad marketing decisions. And it's not because they're not intelligent. It's not because they're not skillful. It's not because they don't care. It may not even be because they don't want to serve the customer well. It's because they have something similar to the ocular blind spot. They have a blind spot in their very conditioning and the psychology of their approach. And that blind spot is self-interest. It is almost impossible for us to overcome our inherent self-interest when thinking about the page we're designing. It was very easy to see in the case of that very well-paid marketer what was wrong. The entire page was designed with company-centric logic instead of customer-centric logic, because despite his intelligence, that blind spot was keeping him from seeing the way the page felt to the consumer. He had become, quote unquote, an expert marketer instead of an expert consumer. Now, I don't have but 26 minutes and 57 seconds left with you. And I don't want to waste a moment of it, because if I can help you to see this and discover how to overcome it, you can walk out of here with more value than I can ever give you by simply showing you techniques, tips, 27 how-tos, and all the other things you may have seen in the past. You first of all have to recognize this issue and how it's blinding us every single day. And then you have to understand what to do about it. And that brings me really to some examples of those who saw it. Look at this. Version A, version B, 173% increase. Version A, this is a British company, I remember them. Hosting group, 189% increase. What's going on here? We're using an apparatus. We're using a very special heuristic. We're using a lens to see through customer eyes instead of through company eyes. This is their best performing page, version A, version B, a 47% increase. This is their best performing page, huge company, 60-year-old, invented the press release business, 112% increase. This is another one, version A, version B, 197% increase. I'm showing this so that you see this is not just a sort of a pleasant conversation or theory or a fairly useful insight. In every case, what happened here is we overcame the blind spot. Here and here. And that's revenue, by the way, conversion. So the point here from these examples is there is a way that every one of us in this room can protect ourselves from making bad decisions because of our natural blind spot. And that leads me to the second point. By consistently embracing a method for seeing through your disconnect, you need a way. You need a consistent way. It's not talent. Some of the most talented people I know have the biggest blind spots. It's not going to be genius. In fact, the more brilliant you are, sometimes the more blind you are in key areas. You don't need to be smarter, you don't need more experience, and you don't need more talent to dramatically improve your existing marketing efforts, whether it's email or it's in social media or any of the digital channels that we're gathered about here today. You need to learn how to see differently. And I'll give you an example of a normal blind spot that we see often. I have two magazines in front of me. I want you to vote with just your left hand, one finger for geographic, two fingers for time. Which one has a higher circulation in 2013? Again, with time limited, just put your hands up. There's not much to see. It has nothing to do with the creative. Just which one do you think? All over the room, because I'm going to ask you another follow-up question, and it's the real insight. I don't expect you to instantly know this. Hold them up. Let me see higher, 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 higher. I'm watching. Okay. Now, the first thing you'll notice is there's not a lot of agreement around the room. And the second thing I notice is that a large percentage of the people chose number 2. I'm going to ask another question. On a scale, and by the way, that doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm just telling you the pattern I'm seeing. Not trying to set you up to think one way or the other. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you in your answer? Now, this is a different question, and I want you to, and by the way, it should be fairly easy to figure this out in terms of which one is best. Most of us are familiar. We see the brands all the time. I want you to hold up your hand with the number of fingers on a scale of 1 to 5. Okay, so I see 4. Let me see around the room. I see 4, 3. I see a 1, 4, 4, 3, 4, 4, 5, 3, 4, they probably work for one of these groups, all right? 5, good, you can put your hands down. Thank you. Now, the reason that second question is important, because it connects to a common problem that we see all over the world in another form of mental blind spot. This publication, by the way, had the highest circulation. How many of you got it right? Be honest. If you got it right, raise your hand. All right, look, now just keep your hand up. Many of us didn't. Now, here's what's interesting. It's okay that you didn't. I didn't know which one. Here's what the problem is. It's not that you got it wrong. It's that in study after study, and I'll show you 3 very old studies, we have a problem. Why don't we ask people to choose the answer to a question like this? If they were accurate in understanding how confident or certain they should be or not, then you would see where the dotted diagonal line is. That's where those curved lines should be. But many scientific studies have corroborated that in virtually every case, look at the statistical medians here, we are far more overconfident than we should be that we have the answer right. And it doesn't matter the question. A question like this, there have been multiple questions used. A question like this will consistently produce this level of significant overconfidence. Now, when you start to realize that, how many of you are familiar with Daniel Kahneman? Anybody know Kahneman, the behavioral economist? There are a group of scientists and economists and behavioral psychologists that have done some fascinating things to discover our blind spots in how we predict, how we work with numbers, in statistics and probability, etc. All I want you to see is that because of this problem, we are constantly, unfortunately, overconfident in our wrong answers. Did you know, and by the way, this guy's going to be speaking today or tomorrow here in our event. Do not miss McGlaughlin's. He is a brilliant astrophysicist who worked at CERN and left it all behind to become a Hollywood screenwriter. Was very successful writing these screenplays. Now he teaches in California at the university, and he writes some of the best books on science I have ever read. He'll be here tomorrow, and he's going to be talking. This is one of his books. Another one is The Drunkard's Walk, a fascinating book on statistics. He is really gifted at taking complex concepts and communicating them to you. And Lawton now points this out in his book. 75,000 police lineups take place each year, and statistics show that 20 to 25% of the witnesses make a choice that police know is incorrect. Now, you're talking about something you want to be very certain about, don't you? And the police tell you, you must be very certain about this. But that same statistical problem is occurring. So, there are techniques that have been developed to overcome these psychological blind spots. And I'm not going to talk about them because our time doesn't permit us. There are, for instance, in project planning, there's a method. It's called reference class forecasting, and it's used to overcome your mistakes. I'll show you another one. In psychology, there's something called implicit association test. I'd love to explain it, but it's not the best use of our time. The point is that we've had to develop very specific ways to overcome the natural handicap that we have. Because it leads us to the one that we need to talk about right now, which is in marketing. In marketing, at McLabs, we developed the conversion heuristic. Some of you may have seen it. Flip your card over, if you would, on the back side, and you'll see an example of this heuristic. It's not the only heuristic, but what it does is it enables you to look at a piece of collateral and to see through the design into the thought sequence of the person, and thereby sort of start to understand where there may be a disconnect in your message and their reception. It's been used over and over again. I'm pointing out its significance, realizing that many of you who have been to these events have heard me talk about this heuristic and others for years, and some of us go back, like Mary Abramson, and do an amazing job of applying it in their own situation and driving dramatic results. But some of us are still too confident. And thus, we are engaging our blind spot in marketing, and our self-interest is keeping us from performing at our highest level. And we've got to be more intentional about applying it. So, let me give you an example of why it becomes so important. You'll notice something that we call the reversion or the dangerous middle. I've seen this over and over again. It's happened in my own organization. And it happens for all of us. In the beginning, we learn something like this. We get excited about it. And then we sort of get comfortable with it. And then we sort of get familiar with it. And then we start to do things on our own. And we sort of set it to the side. And we go backwards. This very year, not just as a favor, for one of the largest retail organizations in the country, in their field, they are number one. I was talking with them on the phone, and they were getting ready to launch a campaign, and that one single piece of collateral had a $20 million spend behind it. One page. They had the same page last year, but of course it was different. They had just attended one of our training events the year before, and they took the page and they optimized it using the conversion heuristic, and they had a record year. Now, I was on the phone, and this was probably a month ago, probably 2 months ago, and they were preparing for the big push, and I looked at the new page, and I just said, I'm concerned. And I began to do live up on the phone, just as a favor. And I began describing the pieces that were wrong, and suddenly the leader broke in, and he said, you sound like you're describing the page we had for last year. I'd never seen it. Guess what we discovered? The new page had experienced drift, reversion, had gone backwards. And by going back to the original, they had a much stronger page. We have this happen all the time. We have to be aware that once we have identified the blind spot and we find a technique for overcoming it, that we don't allow ourselves to drift, or our organization to drift, or our department to drift, because it becomes a significant obstacle to performance. So let's think about this in a specific way, because often what we will do is we will use sort of our data set to understand what's happening and where potentially we need to focus our efforts. So all of us have metrics and analytics, and none of us have them where we want them to be, it seems, but these are basic analytics, and you're looking at an actual funnel, and in that funnel you're seeing where we have a drop-off rate. How many of you can already see where the strongest drop-off rates are, where you should focus? The problem with our metrics is we ask how many instead of why so. The real key here is to use those metrics to understand the why so, and that's where the heuristic helps us. Let me show you what we discovered. External traffic's coming in here, and we understand why it's dropping off. The price is revealed here, so we know why they're dropping off. That may not be the best place to reveal the price, but that explains the drop-off. 90% are not making it through that step. However, the real area to test is after they have the price, why are they not completing the billing and shipping information? And Marketer, I'm going to ask you to help me with that in the time we have remaining. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you the collateral. This is the exact copy of the page. And this control is designed to obviously get the most people possible through this series of micro yeses. But there's something wrong. So I'm going to ask you to break into a group of 3 and then take and identify at least 3 changes you'd make. I'm going to ask you to sort of identify what those changes might be. So in a very short period of time, you need to see. But what you have to be careful is that you find a way to overcome your inherent blind spot. Does that make sense? And I may be able to help you with that more. Just stay there for a moment and write this down on your piece of paper. Actually, I'll tell you what you do. Just take that. Can I hold that from you, madam? This chart right here. I'm going to just pull that up. Take this side. Look at the conversion heuristic. It's explained on the back side. Some of you are already familiar with it. And see if you can find friction points. See if you can find anxiety points. Look at least for the negatives that might be inhibiting conversion. And take just a few minutes, work together, and see what you can come up with your best answer. Let's start right now. John, we'll go. All right, so everyone, feel free to speak, talk, move, and get answers. Go ahead. All right, if I can get your attention right here, who saw one thing that they think would be a significant change? Let me see your hands. Right here, yes.
No sense of security or trust.
No sense of security or trust, which is, if you were looking at the heuristic, it's a problem with what? Somebody tell me. It causes what? Friction, but especially something else. Anxiety. Friction is psychological resistance, like I don't want to do that. Anxiety is psychological concern, and they have to be treated differently. We teach that in the training program. We'll be teaching it tomorrow in the email course, for instance. The email course is sold out, but you can get online, and I don't know if they've opened up any seats or not. You can check with the booth to see if that's possible, but this is what we teach there. All right, somebody else. What do you see right here?
The user could have lost track of their motivation completing the form.
Okay, so the user lost track of their motivation for completing the form. I would agree with that. And there's a reason, and I would connect it with what letter? This guy knows. Roy? What letter? There is not a continuation of the message around. That's right. He's got it. Letter V. And somebody else tell me. Right over here. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
There's too many fields to fill out. 10 fields to fill out. I mean, lessen the number of fields.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will tell you that in the treatment I'm going to show you, we were only because of business rules able to eliminate one field. It's true, but we weren't really able to make a significant difference in that area. But you're still right, okay? And that's friction. Somebody else, yes.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you said about the letter V. We couldn't understand.
Letter V on your chart connects to value proposition. And a major problem with this is they assume that you still remember the value before you started the process. I would say if you look at your own carts right now, 85% of the carts that we look at do nothing. In fact, the number's higher. To continue to talk about value all through the process. And every time you fail to do that, you're tipping the value proposition in favor of the negative, which is costing you conversion. Never assume they remember the value. Somebody else, quickly. Yes, right over here.
You have anxiety on the page because you don't know how much you're going to be charged.
You have anxiety. Well, they've told you the price in the previous page.
They did.
But it's still,
If you're filling out your card, you have no
yes,
validation to know exactly.
no validation. Yes. One more person. Yes, right here.
I think there's potentially some friction elements when you've got the top nav, and those, if you still have the top nav items on this page, they may be distracting. For example, you may get to this page and feel like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm going to click on deals because I could get a better deal than what I've so far been purchasing.
I think that's an excellent point. It's a very good point. Now, the key here, and this is what's very important, with the lens of the heuristic, the C equals 4M plus 3V plus 2 minus, those two, that lens allows you to catch, hopefully, every essential element that might be hurting conversion. The worst possible thing here is to do something and get a 5% lift when you got a 20% lift. Adequacy is the enemy of excellence. Without, remember the reversion, remember the drift, without systematically moving through every single element in the heuristic, your own self-interest may blind you from seeing the true scope of opportunity that you can impact this with. So let's look at what the researchers did and to get a sense. So I'm just going to click and watch now. From value, the treatment added a cart summary. Here's the treatment with the image of the vacation reminding the customers of the value they'll be receiving once complete. Page layout has been made linear instead of horizontal so that it flows naturally with a thought sequence. And this is how the mind works. We control the chronology of the mind with the geography of the page. And remember, we're not optimizing the page. We're optimizing a sequence of thought. And each one of these elements is discovering where there may be some sort of inhibitor in the flow of the thought. Clearly identified the amount of steps in the process. Why do you think this makes it easier? Someone tell me why that might have an impact. Identifying the amount of steps. It takes away the feeling of friction or anxiety that this is going to be a long process. You get a sense of where you're at and how much more it's going to take to do this. Let's go to another one. We added 100% privacy guarantee. This is on anxiety. By the way, many of you have heard me say this before, but do you know what it takes to get that seal? You can't get it anywhere in the world unless you have Photoshop. And the point is that all we're doing is using emphasis to impact the mind. Remember, we're not optimizing the page. We're trying to hit the mind harder with a sense of relief. Let's go on. Added security seal. Offered additional one-on-one support. And added the lowest rate guarantee. Now, you're seeing the two of these. What's the difference between them? How can we know that this hypothesis, which is all this is, you're using the heuristic to build a hypothesis. And the hypothesis is designed to overcome the blind spot that you might have when you built the control. So we run a tight scientific test, certify it, and here's what we discover. Guys, a 36% increase in your cart at this point. Do you understand the difference between that and a 36% increase on your landing page? It hits the bottom line with far more profit because your CPA goes down and far more top line. You win both ways. This is a major win for them. Let's look again for just a moment. Do you see this page? And you'll notice the conversion says, I want you to just look at this right now. This is tough. This is a long page. In my time, let me run down here where I can just see how much time I have left. My time is running out, but we're going to be okay. Take a look here, because I'm going to go ahead for another 2 hours and just spend time with you. It's good quality time. We didn't need a break, did we? And all right, look here and ask yourself as a group right now, what's one thing you might change about this page? Let me see your hand up as soon as you see it. That's hard because there's not a lot to work with, right? You need the lens. Use your heuristic. Don't use your intuition. Don't use your expert marketing. Use your expert consumer lens. Yes, sir. The 2 columns. You're saying it should be 2 columns? It should be 2 columns so it doesn't feel as long. All right, keep that thought in mind. Somebody else. What else would you do? Yes, sir. Increase the typeface so it's easier to read, which causes less friction. Somebody else, way back here, down in the middle here, right over there. Yes?
What do you get? What is the motivation for the user to...
Where is the value on here? That's V. The value proposition is no longer on the page. Now, I'm going to just stop for a moment. I'm going to show you what happens when the scientists use the heuristic to see with. There's the page. Watch it changing. Friction, value, anxiety relief in 2 areas. So we've used the heuristic like a lens to correct for the blind spot. But what is the actual impact? Here it is. You go from this to this. Somebody tell me, I'm going to just ask right up in the front, what do you think, if any, the difference might be between the control and the treatment? Let's just take a guess. This doesn't matter if you're wrong. What do you think? I'm going to pick on somebody. I'm going to ask this lady right here.
Please let me give you
Just give me a guess in percentages. How much better or not do you think B is other than A?
I'm going to guess 30%.
30%. Good guess. And related in some way, let's take a look. Here's the difference. 109%. See, the blind spot is so lethal. Self-interest is so lethal. The true task of the marketer is to move beyond their own self-interest, to actually get out of their person into the person of the consumer and see this direction at and through the collateral into the sequence of thought, understanding how it feels to the other side. That is where the power comes from. That is where you can learn to take what you're doing right now and drive dramatic differences. Now, I wish I could take longer. In fact, we may find, some of you have submitted pages. My time is up. I want to share with you live optimization, looking at some of your pages and applying this same heuristic. Would you like to do that at some point in the conference if we find any available time to do so? We'll do our best if we can. It's a very tightly scheduled conference. But the key is for you to consistently start seeing this way. And in it, it doesn't matter whether it's your email or an ad in social media or a landing page or it's right into your cart. It doesn't even matter if you're trying to talk to an employee to get better performance. It doesn't matter if you're trying to talk to your boss to get a raise. My son is up in the front. Son, if you're trying to talk to a desperate girl, again, it's still the same. You have to get out of your self-interest and see through the eyes of the other side. I want to thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity this morning.